You already know why Alexander won.
Genius. Son of Zeus, if you trust the coins. It's on the book covers, it's in his name, it's tattooed on men who never held a spear. One problem, he didn't win this battle. Darius lost it. And he lost it by doing everything right. That is not a turn of phrase. Every advantage Darius III built for himself at Gaugamela, the ground, the numbers, the machines, turned into the thing that killed him. This is the story of a trap, built perfectly by the man it caught. And you are standing inside it. A flat plain in northern Iraq. The first morning of October, 331 years before Christ. Dust to the horizon in every direction, and all of it is moving. The Persian Empire was not just large, it was the largest thing anyone had ever built. Egypt to India, 40 times the size of the Greek world, 220 years old. Something like 70 million people under one king. No army in the ancient world had ever brought it down. Nobody had come close. Then a 22-year-old crossed into Asia. Alexander had inherited Macedonia from a father murdered at his own wedding. He sold his personal property to pay his men before he sailed. When a general asked what he had kept for himself, Alexander gave him one word: hope. Keep that word. You will need it again at the end of this video, and it will not mean what it means now. He won at Granicus, he won at Issus, he took the island fortress of Tyre after a 7-month siege that every engineer in the Mediterranean called impossible. Darius offered peace. Twice. Half the empire. A royal marriage. More gold than Macedonia had ever seen in one place. Parmenion, his most senior general, told him, "I would accept this if I were Alexander." Alexander told him, "So would I if I were Parmenion." The war continued. At Issus, Darius had learned one lesson, and he learned it correctly. He had been beaten on ground that was too narrow. His numbers could not spread. 200,000 men packed into a coastal strip, and only the front rank could fight. Alexander had used that, and Darius had watched him do it. He would not hand him that gift twice. So his engineers went out and found a plain near a village called Gaugamela in what is now northern Iraq. Wide, open, nothing on it. And then they made it wider. They cleared the scrub. They filled the dips. They leveled ground that was already level because level was not enough. It had to be perfect. Understand what that means. Darius did not choose a battlefield. He manufactured one. On it, he put 200 scythed chariots, blades on the wheel hubs, spinning at the height of a man's thigh. On flat ground, at speed, a chariot line does not fight infantry, it harvests it. He put out 15 war elephants, infantry from 30 nations, cavalry in the tens of thousands, the finest heavy horse on earth. Modern historians put his full army somewhere between 100,000 and 250,000 men. The ancient sources say 1 million, and the ancient sources are lying. Alexander had 47,000, 5-1, on ground built to order. With the only mechanized weapon in the ancient world lined up and pointed at the Macedonian center, Darius had written every line of this battle. There was one thing he had not accounted for. Alexander had been reading over his shoulder while he wrote it. The 30th of September, the night before, Parmenion came to Alexander's tent with a proposal, and it was a good one. Attack now, in the dark. The Persian army is enormous and spread across a plain so wide that darkness makes their numbers meaningless. Darkness neutralizes the chariots. You cannot aim a chariot at something you cannot see. In confusion, the smaller army always does better. Several of the other commanders agreed with him. Alexander listened to all of it. Then he said, "I will not steal my victory." Plutarch records the line. The exact wording is debated. The decision is not. Now that sounds like arrogance. It has been read as arrogance for 2,000 years. It isn't. Think about what a night attack actually buys you. A night attack that works produces a chaotic, unverifiable win. Nobody watching from the edges of the empire understands what happened. No Persian governor 600 miles away believes the result. Darius survives, walks east, and raises another army from provinces that have not yet accepted they lost. A night attack that fails is the end of everything. Alexander did not need to beat the Persian army. He needed to beat the idea of the Persian king. He needed Darius to run, in daylight, in front of his own men, in front of the governors of every province, where it could not be explained away as bad luck, or bad ground, or a trick in the dark. He wanted the story, not the field. So he turned Parmenion down, and he went to sleep. Across the plain, Darius made a decision of his own, and it was the reasonable one. He had just been told that the Macedonians might come in the night. He could not risk being caught lying down. So the Persian army stood, in formation, in armor, all of it. Hundreds of thousands of men on their feet in the dark, holding a line against an attack that was never coming. Dusk until dawn, 11 hours. Alexander's men slept. The 1st of October, dawn. Darius sent the chariots, 200 vehicles, blades turning on the hubs, aimed straight at the Macedonian infantry, across the flat ground he had prepared for exactly this moment, in exactly this direction, 6 months in advance. And here is the thing about a weapon everybody can see coming. Alexander had been drilling his men for weeks. The phalanx did not hold formation and receive the charge. That is what a phalanx does. That is what the entire Persian plan assumed it would do. They opened ranks. Lanes appeared in the Macedonian line, deliberate, rehearsed, wide enough for a chariot and a team of horses. And 200 scythed chariots rode through gaps in an army instead of into it, while javelin men cut the drivers down from the side as they passed. Horses panicked. The few teams that made it all the way through were taken by grooms in the rear. 200 chariots. 6 months of preparation. 5 minutes. But watch Darius here, because he is not wrong yet. He still has his numbers. He still has his ground. He still has the plan. He watches the chariots get cleaned up, and he waits for the main lines to close. What happened next is one of the few moments in military history where the battle turns in slow motion, and you can see exactly why. Alexander began walking his right wing to the right, not charging, not breaking, walking, at an angle, steadily, away from the center of the Persian line. Now put yourself on the other side. You are Darius, and you have positioned your left-wing cavalry to do one specific job. Get around the end of the Macedonian line and take it from behind. That is the plan. That is what the ground is for. But the end of the Macedonian line is moving. If Alexander walks far enough right, he walks off the leveled ground entirely, and everything you built stops working. So you send your cavalry after him. You have to. There is no version of the plan where you let him go. They extend, they stretch, they ride right to keep the wing covered. Farther. Farther.
And then, between the Persian left and the Persian center, a gap. Not a large gap, but a gap in a line of 200,000 men is still a gap. And it is the first thing that has happened all morning that Darius did not order. Alexander saw it open.
He had been walking for an hour to make it. He pulled the companion cavalry into a wedge, 1,500 horsemen in a triangle with him at the point of it. And he aimed them not at the flank, not at the mass of infantry where the fighting was, at the gap. At Darius. The wedge hit the Persian center and went through it like a nail. At the same moment, on the far left of the Macedonian line, everything was going wrong. When Alexander's right wing drifted, the units beside it followed to stay connected, and the units beside those followed them, which opened a gap in the Macedonian line. Persian and Indian cavalry poured into it and hit Parmenion's wing from the inside. A messenger found Alexander in the middle of his charge. Parmenion needs help, now. Alexander was perhaps a few hundred meters from the king of Persia. He stopped. There is real scholarly argument about this moment. Arrian says he received the message and turned back. Some historians argue he was already turning for other reasons, and the message arrived to justify it. What nobody argues about is the result. Alexander wheeled 1,500 horsemen around, rode back across his own battlefield, and hit the Persian cavalry from behind while they were busy destroying his left. They broke. The battle was over.
And the king was gone.
At Issus 2 years earlier, Darius had done this once already. He had turned his chariot in the middle of a battle and ridden away from it. His mother, his wife, and his children were captured that day. Alexander took them in and treated them as royalty. His mother is said to have called Alexander her son. At Gaugamela, on ground he chose, on ground he leveled, surrounded by every weapon the largest empire on earth could put in a field, Darius ran again.
His chariot was found abandoned, his bow, his shield. He rode east toward Ecbatana, then further east toward Bactria, where his satrap Bessus commanded a large force and swore loyalty in every letter. Bessus stabbed him. Not a Macedonian, not a Greek. The last king of the Achaemenid Empire was murdered by one of his own generals, in a wagon, on a road in Parthia, while running from a man who was already hunting him.
Alexander found the wagon. Darius was still breathing when the first Macedonians reached him. He died before Alexander got there. Alexander took off his own cloak and laid it over the body. He ordered Darius buried in Persepolis with full royal honors. Then he had Bessus hunted across 2,000 miles of Central Asia, tried and executed for killing his king. After that, the empire did not fall so much as open. Babylon opened its gates without a fight. The population came out and lined the roads.
Susa surrendered. 49,000 talents of silver sitting in the treasury, the largest fortune ever taken in a single campaign, before or since. Persepolis fell, and Alexander burned the palace. Deliberately. An answer, 150 years late, for the burning of Athens.
220 years of empire. One afternoon on a plain nobody could find on a map today. Here is the part the books tend to skip. Darius had every advantage at Gaugamela, and he got them by being good at his job. He chose the ground. He leveled it. He brought the chariots and the elephants. He outnumbered Alexander 5-1. He kept his army standing all night so it could not be caught asleep. Every one of those decisions is defensible. Several of them are correct, and every single one of them became a weapon in the other man's hand.
The flat ground that gave his chariots a clean run gave Alexander an unobstructed hour of walking. The line wide enough to wrap around both Macedonian flanks was wide enough to tear when it stretched. The night spent standing in armor meant that when the sun came up, exhausted men faced rested ones.
Darius wrote every line of this battle. Alexander changed the last page, not because he was a god, because he understood the one assumption underneath every trap ever built, that the prey walks in the way the hunter expected. And that word from the beginning, hope. The thing Alexander said he had kept for himself when he gave everything else away. It was never optimism. It was the only asset that does not sit still and wait to be used the way you plan. Darius had built the perfect battlefield. He just built it for the wrong man.